Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to those of you who are here for your reunions. We really appreciate your taking time to be with us this weekend. We are going to have our fair share of parties. I know some of you enjoyed the reception last night, and of course there's a large dinner tonight, but it wouldn't be a law school reunion if there weren't some substance to it. That substance is brought to us by our two distinguished panels. I want to thank the panelists for taking time in order to do this, and all the reunion committee chairs who helped bring people here, and of course Miel Marquis, our master of ceremonies, who has made everything for us possible. So for those who I didn't meet yet, I'm Jeremy Paul. I have the honor of serving as Dean here at Northeastern Law School, and I have a very limited role this morning, which is to introduce the moderator of our first panel on state and local government. I think state and local government is a great choice for a topic, especially when you look at what's happening in the national government. And I know you weren't here yesterday, but we had two students who spoke, and one of them professed his undying love for state and local government as his plans for his career. He said he's done all his co-ops and that's what he did. So
contacts me.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so our moderator for the first panel is State Senator Karen Spilka, who was a member of the class of 1980. She serves in the Massachusetts State Senate, representing the 2nd Middlesex and Norfolk District. I got to read the towns because I can't remember all these towns. Ashland, Framingham, Franklin, Holliston, Hopkinton, Medway, and Natick in the Metro West region. She's also the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, which, as I'm sure you know, is the committee that oversees the budget, and chair of the Biotech Legislative Caucus and the Tech Hub Caucus. I hope we're working on getting Amazon here to Boston. That would be a nice thing. Her legislative accomplishments include efforts in a broad range of areas, including economic development, job creation, education, juvenile justice, and services for the elderly and disabled communities. She hasn't always been in state and local government. Before that, she was in private practice as an arbitrator and mediator, specializing in labor and employment law and community and court mediation. She's been a facilitator and a fact finder in disputes in the public and private sectors, as well as a social worker and trainer of adult mediation and school-based peer mediation programs, collaborative-based collective bargaining, and conflict resolution strategies. I know you have a very busy life, and we're very grateful to you to take time to come and speak to the members of the class today.
Thank you, Dean Paul. And I just want to say what a phenomenal job you've been doing, really helping to highlight Northeastern Law School that I know is near and dear to all of your hearts, and that's what brings you here. So thank you so much. Thank you to the panel, some of which I've known beforehand. And, you know, the Mass Senate has produced some terrific lawyers here, I have to say. And to Miel and her terrific staff as well. I have to say it's great to be back. I don't get back here as much as I would like to. As noted, I don't like to always acknowledge this, but I graduated in 1980. It was a very different law school. The buildings were different and everything. And I came to law school. I graduated Cornell as a social worker. I moved to Boston to work with children and families. I first waitressed because I couldn't find a job, actually, and then became a social worker, entered Northeastern wanting to go into originally juvenile justice, and came out as a labor lawyer. That was when Tom Campbell was here, Carl Clare, and others, and really helped sway me to labor law. I worked on behalf of unions, employees, and then I worked for the state. Eventually, in the 90s, I became an arbitrator, mediator, and I know how important conflict resolution is and effective problem solving in order to make policy, basically. And I have to say that background has really helped me, all of it, as particularly, I mean, as a legislator, but especially as chair of Ways and Means. I did not plan on running for the legislature. Some people, graduate college and think of this immediately. I was active in middle school and high school. And then I sort of fell out of politics. And when we moved to Ashland, my hometown, my husband and I decided we're raising a family, let's get involved, and we joined boards and committees. And I think that for any of you who has joined a board or committee, once you join one, you get sucked into, many others because people see you as doing and they want doers. So it's great. But that was my introduction, and then I ran for school committee in 1998. And when I was on the school committee in Ashland, I really felt like Ashland, Framingham, some of the surrounding metro-west towns were not getting their fair share of education funding. Using my background in conflict resolution, formed a statewide coalition. So we came up with guiding principles because everybody was arguing for something else, and came up with consensus and started lobbying the legislature. So when my state rep resigned, I literally was on the phone with the person who's still head of the Mass Association of School Committees and said, oh my God, so-and-so just resigned. And it was literally like a light bulb going off. I said, I think I want to run. I can make better change from within the State House than from out the State House. So he said, well, then get off the phone and, announce. So I did. I said, I have to call my husband first, which I did. He's always supported me. And before the day was out, I was the first candidate to announce, which was good because I was not born and brought up in the area. At that point, it was the state rep seat for all of Ashland and part of Framingham. There had never been an Ashland person who had won that state rep seat because it was the smaller piece, let alone never a woman. So I really just worked really hard and surprised folks, and I won, and then ran for state senate. So I've been a senator since 2005, and I've had the incredible opportunity to sort of come full circle. I never thought I'd go back as much to children and families, but I was the first Senate chair of the Joint Committee for Children and Families, and I added persons with disabilities. I had a sister who just recently passed who had Down syndrome and then Alzheimer's. So these are issues. I was her advocate, and I was an advocate in this area long before I was a legislator. So it gives you the opportunity to fight for things that you really believe in passionately. So I was able to fight for a change in the education funding formula, a change which happened in 2007 finally, a change in what we even named, if you remember, the Department of Mental Retardation. I was the one that advocated changing it to the Department of Developmental Services. Not even to include the word disability, because over time that will become, not acceptable. So, I've had the opportunity to overhaul the old CHINS law, Children in Need of Services, and create family resource centers across the state so children and families can go 24/7 to get a uniform assessment and get referred out to services. So that has been an incredible opportunity, and why on days that I wonder, God, why am I doing this? Which happens almost every single week, if not more frequently. To be able to see the fruits of your labor in rallying and working with an incredible team, my staff, and with people. I was chair of economic development, and able to overhaul the economic development agencies. And now as Senate Ways and Means, not only do I sort of oversee the formation and finalizing the Senate budget and the state budget, but I have an opportunity to work on policy. The Senate Ways and Means sort of works as a funnel where most policy comes through before it goes to the floor. So, the bills that that I filed this year, and I'm saying this just to give you an example of some of the incredible opportunities of areas, and the wide, diverse areas that you have to work on and hopefully make a positive difference. I filed last session the Women on Boards resolution, which we passed to get more women on boards and upper level management, because it's woefully, it's terrible. And right now in Massachusetts, as it is across the state, I filed the piece that had with the pay equity where you could not ask somebody what their current salary was until they got the job offer. And we combined that with Senator Pat Jalen's piece, and we worked together. And if you remember, we finally got a revised pay equity bill through last session, which I think has a lot of teeth and will make a difference. And then I'm the lead sponsor in the Senate on the paid family and medical leave. Because that, I mean, I don't even think I need to go down there, why that is important for all of you. And, you know, just so many other incredible opportunities. Right now, I am smack in the middle of overhauling criminal justice reform. And we, you know, we've really taken a look to get rid of a lot of the minimum mandatories, low-level minimum mandatories, overhaul the bail laws, address solitary to make reviews more frequent and really help change some of that. We inserted my juvenile justice reform where we raised the age. We did that a few years ago to 18. In this bill, we raise it to 19. We create for the first time a parent-child privilege, an absolute privilege, so parents can help their children in these cases. And we expunge low-level misdemeanors for our juveniles. And it just does so much. I'm also working on the healthcare reform bill, working with the chair of healthcare to draft that bill, and we unveiled both of them. So, you know, amid everything else, these are areas, and it's very exciting, and this is why I do what I do, and you know, I have an opportunity to work with terrific people in the State House, and that's one reason why I'm so proud and pleased that two of our panelists are either former or current Senate staff that we rely upon so much. They play such an incredible role in policy development. The senators, certainly in the House, meet with staff, and we meet, and we come up with some great ideas. And before I was chair of Ways and Means, I used to actually do a lot of the writing of the bill. I don't do that much writing anymore, but we sit and we brainstorm and we come up with ideas, and then staff goes to write it and write it through, and we hash it out, and you know, they come up with some creative, innovative ideas as well. And it's very exciting to be able to do that. So I do want to start out by introducing Courtney Feeley Karp from O2, Senior Counsel at Klavens Law Group, and she formerly worked at the Mass Department of Energy Resources and formerly the Senate Ways and Means. That's where she was working when I first met Courtney. It's great to have you here. Passionate about climate change, environmental issues, and healthcare. George Platt, 72, has been very involved in Florida politics for decades. He's former chair of the Broward County Democratic Party and former treasurer of the Florida Democratic Party. He was in the Peace Corps and worked as a community organizer in Boston while in law school. Welcome, great to have you back. Stephanie Swanson from 2012, also from the state Senate. I did not pick these folks, but disclosure. Chief of Staff and General Counsel in the office of Mass State Senator Eric Lesser from out in the western part of the state. Prior to that, she worked for Senator Barry Feingold's legislative office and on his campaign. And Kristen Snow, 2018, is a current student. Congratulations, great to have you here. She's a community activist in Chicago and at Northeastern Law School. She's involved in a student group, How to Get It Done, I like that name, centered around community organizing. So the format of this panel, especially with this group, you know, hopefully will be informal. We want to encourage discussion among the panelists and among the audience. So I'm going to first start out by asking the panelists two broad questions. And after each question, we'll have time for question and answers from the audience, and then just see where we go from there. So the first question is, given the changes in the political environment since November 2016, again, I don't think we need to explain that part of the statement, how have the roles of state and local governments changed? And how have citizens' expectations of state, local governments changed? Courtney, do you want to start?
Sure. So despite my obvious preference for the legislative side of government, I actually think the most, at least in my mind, as a citizen, the most obvious change I've seen is that I feel like I need to go volunteer to help out Maura Healey because of all the lawsuits that she has brought since November 2016. Which I think, is just a testament to our Commonwealth and the values that we have, continued to espouse here. But it is a great reminder of, as horrible as November was, as horrible as it continues to be, that there are so many other ways to either fight the proposals of this administration or to find proactive, positive ways to make change, like Senator Spilka was outlining in terms of some of the things that are currently pending here, regardless of what's going on in Washington. And so I'm sure like many people on this panel and in this room after November, I just struggled with the concept of what to do. And then particularly as a lawyer, like I have skills, supposedly, but this is it. This is the time of, and what do we do? And there's been, I think, a little bit of sense of helplessness. I was very encouraged to hear about Christian's group and stuff that's going on campus. But I think for those of us who don't have the flexibility of being a student, finding ways to engage has been a real question. One way that my husband and I, who's also a 2002 graduate, and I was just talking to Christian about this, we have been collecting signatures for Senator Spilka's Family Medical Leave Act and the $15 minimum wage. And not only does that, one by one feel like you're making a change, not just in getting the signatures, but we're engaging our community and talking to people about these issues. And frankly, as small a task as that seems, it may be one of the most important things, because I think the discourse in this country has shown that people are not talking civilly to each other and having those conversations about, I think what Senator Spilka would call a no-brainer, family medical leave, really does, kind of get people engaged in a different way too. And I think that's, in my personal life, that's been the most positive impact, that I feel like I've been able to contribute and see, since that time.
George?
The idea of dialogue is interesting. Maybe a little easier in Massachusetts than it is in Florida. Florida is now the third largest state, about 21 million people, about 100 million tourists a year kind of meander through there. And most recently we've had a new wave, thank you, of, unfortunately, but Puerto Ricans who are coming to live with their families because of the disaster in Puerto Rico. It's never changing population. One of the things that we've discovered in an age of Florida, there are more Democrats in the state of Florida than there are Republicans, and yet the Republicans in the State House have a veto-proof majority. Go figure. Now, there's a little thing called gerrymandering that the U.S. Supreme Court is looking at, North Carolina being the most egregious, but there are many other areas where even though we might have a majority Democrats, we can't do much of anything sometimes. So a lot of that brings you back down to the local level or to what we call self-help. And I've noticed lately that one of the things that we're doing is, and it's a result of both the gerrymandering and as a result of 2016 and what's not happening at the federal level, is we are seeing a lot more government by referendum. So if you're not able to change things through the legislature, you try to do it through referenda that you put on the ballot. So for example, we finally got medical marijuana, but we had to do that through petition, which one of my partners in my business chaired that campaign. Now, and I mentioned to some people last night, what could change the politics of Florida, which in turn can change, as we know, the politics of the nation. I was treasurer of the Florida Democratic Party paying the bills when we did that little recount back in 2000. You might remember those 536 votes that didn't get counted. So we know that adding people to the voter rolls is important. There's a petition for a constitutional amendment in Florida that will allow people who were formerly convicted felons, most of them when they were young, to get their voting rights back. Because in Florida, there is no automatic restoration of voting rights. You might not believe this, but we have over 1.5 million disenfranchised people in Florida who were formerly convicted as felons. Most of them, I might add, people of color who were kids who were probably selling a little baggie of something on the street corner when they were very young, and they've never had their voting rights restored. So the petition is going to go to the voters, hopefully. The Supreme Court of Florida signed off on the language. It wouldn't include people that were convicted of murder or people who were convicted of sexual felonies, but it would include just about everybody else who paid their debt to society. So